our students, our staff, our visitors, and our guests here with us today at the Faculty of Business Dialogue Media and its role in brand essay. It's good to have Lyndon and Kieno back with us this week. We had a wonderful time last week, I'm sure you'd agree, and I trust that, that today will be no different to that. If not that, then even better. Just a word on Kieno for those of you who might have missed it. Kieno is the founder of KKI Holdings, that stands for Kieno Kammies Innovation Holdings. He is also the co-founder of Innovation City, but prior to those two roles, he spent many years in media. So we are in good hands this afternoon. But before I hand over to him, let's all close our eyes for a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the blessing of this new day. Thank you for this opportunity that we have to get together to talk about important matters such as these. As this, we ask, dear Lord, that you would guide us now and that your blessing may be upon the next session. This we ask in your name. Amen. Over to you, Kieno.
Thank you very much. How's everybody today? Blessed, that's good to hear. I came dressed up as an entrepreneur today. These suit things strangled me a little bit. But I'm really privileged to be back. I really had a good time last week, so thank you very much once again for taking the initiative to host these chats. And of course, thanks to Lyndon and his team who've partnered. I'm going to be introducing you to a man who's done so many things. If I told you everything he's done, then we'd be at the end of the conversation by the time I ran through his esteemed profile. A man I've got a lot of respect for, Lyndon Barnes, who is the managing director at Arena Holdings. You guys have heard of the Sunday Times, Business Day. They've got a whole lot of titles. They've got Gallo for those people who like music, and they fall squarely under him. He's the man who has to make sure that he runs the teams that make all these media entities successful. But he's done more than that. So we're going to talk about, Lyndon, the man, the history. We'll go through that. But I think our topic today is, we talk about 30 years, we talk about democracy, we talk about the role of the media. Lyndon, I'm going to get back to the thing. I like turning things upside down. Let's start with this topic, right? I used to enjoy media a lot. I still respect the platform it's given me. But one day, I took my son to hospital, and I was not doing my breakfast show. But I was listening to it. And it took me 25 minutes to get to the hospital. By the time I got to the hospital, I was so depressed listening to my own show, because it was all about politics. It was all about why the country is not going to make it. It was all about negativity. It was about, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be critical. We've got some of the best investigative journalists in this country. But surely it's about balance. Do you think we have good news to share in this country?
Thanks, Kieno. Let me just make sure that I'm switched on. Am I on? I know last week they complained that I wasn't completely on, but I'm technologically challenged.
You're on.
Okay, I'm on. Okay, right. Yeah, it's good to be back here and share with you. In terms of news, right, so first thing the guys will always tell us that bad news sells. People want to know more. They get the paper to see what's happening in somebody's life, etc. They're all interested to hear that. And so we experiment quite a lot, okay?
See, now artificial intelligence will never be able to do that.
Is that okay?
Excellent.
But we have such a lot of great news in this country, and particularly if you look at the 30 years that we've come, and it's 30 years of democracy and 30 years of freedom. And generally, even at this stage, you want to talk about all the negative things, like, we don't have electricity, load shedding. And that's why I suppose the government is keeping the lights on these days to make us all say different things and focus on different things. Otherwise, that's all that we will be speaking about. So the question would be that when we now enter 30 years of democracy and we want to celebrate, what will we talk about?
Exactly.
Right? And so there's probably 3 key themes that we can talk about. And I would like to say the one theme that the media must focus on is, I will call it our land, our nation, and our people. So if you look at our land, South Africa, people still love South Africa, right? People love to come here. We've got fantastic, beautiful country, people, and we can still be proud of that. And we've been able to maintain some of them. We've made some of them World Heritage Sites, right? And people will travel to come and enjoy our physical land. We all have space to live on, right? So there's a lot of good news in terms of that and how we are situated in terms of global terms. People will still say it's one of the most beautiful places to visit in the world.
Okay, one more time. Let's see. There we go.
Okay,
is that on now?
No. There we go.
There we go. Now
All
we go.
right.
There we go. We're in business.
Can I just rewind myself quickly now?
Let's get back to the land.
So really, it's about just what's happening in our physical land and how beautiful it is and how we've treasured it. Of course, we are concerned that some areas that we should, bolster. But on the whole, we've been able to enter the global fray as far as World Heritage Sites are concerned. The Robben Islands, and you can go to the wetlands, and you can go along. So that's still good news and how we've maintained it. And then also in terms of our nation and what our nation has achieved as a collective. So what do we talk about here? We talk about, for example, our team will go to the International Court of Justice and represent us well as a nation. I'm not talking about the politics whether you agree or don't agree, but they do a great job. As far as that is concerned. Well, of course, we can then mention things like rugby, right? Our national teams and what we've achieved on the global stage. Well, last year we got excited when Banyana progressed, and they're going to the World Cup, by the way. So we're all going to support them. Bafana did a bit better in the African Cup of Nations. So as a nation, when we organize ourselves, we represent the country very well. And that's good news. And the transformation within those teams and those groupings, we've seen a huge change in it, where we are represented well. And then the last one is about our people. Our people are just exceptional, right? If you've seen us, I mean, we don't want to start with the Charlize Therons, but let's just take a look, for example, things like the Grammy Awards. Now, we've got Black Coffee, Zakes Van Tweenie, Tyler, come back with, and how they've handled this internationally. We can talk about Batu's shoes that's making the world. We can talk about, what is this, Poppy, who's now designing for LeBron James, I came across this guy, I'm trying to think of his name now. I think it's Tebe. He did a design for Louis Vuitton, a bag, and became the designer of the year. And I can go on and on, there's drip shoes past the liquidation stage, but people are doing great things internationally. And when we look at all the negativity around us, we must say, wow, we've really achieved on the global stage,
Absolutely. So a lot of people, I mean, since like I said, 30 years in the media, and the editors will fight back and they go, no, this is what people want to hear. Right. My question always is, and I had a discussion with one of my editors. Now, I'm not saying, listen, there's corruption. There are some politicians we need to kick out the country. There's a whole lot of things. That's me saying it, right? But there's a lot of things that go wrong. There's youth unemployment. We spoke about this last week. And those are all big challenges. But if you just took the time, just listening to everything Lyndon just said, and you look at what ordinary people are doing despite government, right? And even with the support of government. If I just look at our hub, Minister Aaron Motsoaledi helped us in the sense that we will be having a resource for Home Affairs in our space to help with visas, etc., right? Because we asked for it. So some people are willing, not everybody's bad. If we just took the time to pick up and focus on the things that people are getting right, then when you get to work in the morning or when you get to your classes, you don't feel like you know, going off to some place in a handbasket. It feels like you too can be like Tyler, could be like any one of these people that we spoke about that represent us so well, not just internationally, but even locally. And that's all I'm asking the media to do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't report on corruption and people getting assassinated and politics. Do it. But for crying out loud, create a beat that actually focuses on, hey, what's actually going right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you take, I brought you copies again today of the Sunday Times and the Financial Mail and stuff. So if you, for example, what used to happen is that the guys look for a real juicy story for Sundays, all right? So we had to change the mindset of that. So you'll see like this Sunday, Medical Rescue, all right? And that gives you an idea of the changes. And I'll talk a little bit about how do you, because we can't influence editors and tell them what to put on the front pages, but how do you set up a culture where the whole business thinks differently?
Yes.
You know, and maybe I can talk a little bit about actually Arena and how it came about and how it fits in for you guys as marketing students. But you spoke about politicians and things like that. I see that we've got Angela Sobey in the house, who's the premier candidate for Action SA. Welcome to you, and glad that you could be here as well. So there we have a quasi-politician getting into politics now.
Well, hold on. Did she walk in before or after I made that comment earlier?
Just after you made it, she heard you.
Just checking.
Okay. I was actually, by the way, listening to Rod Solomon's summary of her interview. It was actually quite complimentary. He gave 5 things. But anyway, we're not. So what we do, how do you influence the mind in media, and how do you build brand SA? How do you build a meaningful brand? What are the things that you look at? So this is what we did. When we bought these businesses from Tiso Blackstar, you know, I actually locked myself in a room for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I looked at all the attributes that we wanted this thing to be. We said we wanted to be a platform of hope.
Yes.
We said that we wanted to be truthful and open to scrutiny and present all the views. And I took all these words. So if you're a brand marketing or marketing student, you know, you look at all the attributes you want, and I put them all on a piece of paper, and I sat in the room and I started thinking. And I said, what kind of name do we build to give us that kind of attitude? Yeah. And then after much searching, and I'm a guy, I like history and heritage and so on, and I thought of village squares, right? In the old movies and in Bible times, everything used to happen on the village square. Yes. And you could go there and you could see, right? There's a dancing troupe that comes through and they present and people run to the village square, or the king is about to behead you because you didn't, you know, do the right things, whatever, but you see it for your own. And you can either applaud or you can jeer or whatever. And then I said, okay, that's what the name we should be. And you kind of think of an amphitheater. Yes. And then you say, well, I can't call us amphitheater, right? Or village square. And then you keep on searching and searching and you say, arena. Okay? Being in an arena. That's where you can see things happening. You can experience different things. Either, you know, you go to a stadium, it's a football match, and then next time it's, you know, a church service, and next time it's a conference or whatever it might be. That is how we came up with the arena. And we said our vision must be connecting people to thrive. So you can already see the positiveness there. And we said we want to be a platform of hope. You know, and as our mission, so we always say to people, what do you get up every day? When you get up in the morning, what do you come to do? And we say, okay, we're coming to inform, we're coming to educate, and we're coming to entice. So we inspire people through information and entertainment, you know, and educating people, and therefore inspire people. And so therefore, when you set that as your company ethos, it is then, it filters through to everybody. So then all your editors must ask, am I educating? Am I entertaining? Am I inspiring people? You get what I'm saying?
Yep, 100%.
You know, you look at all of those kind of things. So then you start setting the scene for the platform of hope.
There's a fine line, obviously, with having an ethos, having an arena, and then obviously you've got the editors. In this country, editorial independence is sacrosanct, right? And I remember, I can tell you stories of a minister who tried to get me to do something, and his handlers phoned me before I did the interview, and I said, no, not doing it.
Yeah.
And they phoned my producer, and I then took the phone and I said, Minister, we're not doing it. I said, if you want to go to my CEO, we're not doing it unless you do X, Y, and Z. So I'm not here to mention names. It's a person I actually do have a lot of respect for, but sometimes editorial independence is important, but you also can't hide behind editorial independence and have this one-sided, jaundiced view of the country. It's about asking who's my target audience? Who's listening to me? Do they only want to hear about all the negative stuff, which we must write about? Or is there something that can give them hope? And you generally don't know what you don't know. So you need people that are well-versed when you're hiring into your teams, people who have networks, who understand a lot broader than just politics, what is happening in the fabric of society. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so that's quite important, right? And therefore you must make sure that you have quite a mixed bag of what we call diversity, right, in your team, so that they can have different viewpoints, because we all have blind spots, and we've all been socialized in a certain way, right? So therefore, it's also sometimes difficult for us to have that worldview. We try, but we still have blind spots, and that is why you have a diversified team, right? To also then stimulate it. So we, for example, we encourage a lot of research all the time. So we've built up a research unit internally that can help, because of course there's editorial research where you research for the stories, and then there's just other general research. So we always say to our people, be well researched, give the different viewpoints, and even if you say that this is what's happening, but these are other alternatives. So when you then have to look at how you hire, you find all these challenges that you have to face, right? So because when you look at all our senior reporters, they all generally come from one stable, okay? Over the years, they've been there for 20-odd years, they've got the insight, they've got all the networks, they know how to get the information, blah, blah, blah. And then you bring the youth in, so you go through this lull. You know, we struggle, so we've struggled a lot when we bring in a lot of young reporters now. Obviously now also we're in a digital space, right? So we ask the other guys, when you go and interview, also take a audio with you or a video with you. They can't, they struggle. They just can't. They still go with their pen and their book and they ask you questions on the phone. They struggle, right? But now for us in this day and age, if you put the camera on or your phone, your iPhone, and you interview, you can cut that clip and it can go viral, you know, you can.
Exactly.
So the new way of getting people in, so we struggle a lot now in the media industry, where we have a lot of younger folk, but we now compensate it to say they are more multi-skilled, you know, as far as that is concerned.
On that point though, it's also what we're asking the younger folk to do, right? If you're asking them to do sort of older things that reporters have done for the last 20 years, it's difficult to acclimatize. It's very difficult to have the networks. It's I mean, listen, simple things like fact-checking. When we studied journalism, there was something called audi alterum partem, which is tell the other side, right? So it's important to get balanced, to get your facts right. But young people are also experts in their own respective fields. How many of you here are between the ages of 17 and 23? All right.
Sure.
How many of you still sit and listen to a radio station every day? Okay. Cool. How many of you actually sit and watch TV at night? Watch this.
Yeah.
How many of you sit on your phones most of the time? So I would ask a media company who's busy planning for the future, right? What are they doing to make sure that you're interested in their content? What are they doing? Because if you're 22 today, 18 today, in 10 years, I did okay in maths, so, you know, you'll be 28. You're studying at an institution, which means you're going to get to a managerial position at some stage, right? Some earlier, some later, doesn't matter when you get there. But the bottom line is you're going to be making decisions. You're going to have budgets that you manage. How many of you will tend to go to the mediums that you actually understand and where you know an audience like you actually visits? You'd go there, won't you? As opposed to trying to find Seven the Line somewhere and trying to find an ad there, right? So, I mean, this is my point. I think when I just would like to get your take on it. You have news, which is news, right, which covers politics, etc. But there should be a subset, almost an aggregation of content with other levels of experts in their fields. The one day I couldn't figure out, I had to do a video. Now, I'm an old hat video editor. We did machine-to-machine editing. Don't worry, Betacam, long time ago. And I couldn't figure out this Google thing, map thing, where this thing turns and then it lands on your building. Like, you know, it spins, the earth spins, and then it zooms into your building. I Googled, who did I find? Like a 13-year-old explaining to me how to do this on Google.
Yeah.
So just because you're young doesn't mean you're deaf. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you know things we don't and things that can help us. And I think that's key. So what's your take on including young people? So, I mean, listen, let's not get kicked off stage by editors here, but almost having a subset of aggregated content, verified experts in your field that can bring on a whole new stream, which you could maybe filter into your traditional news.
Let's just give you the reality first. Those 70 to 23-year-olds that put up their hand and they don't pay the bills.
But they will.
Well.
And but they also get their parents, right? Let's talk about this. They get their parents to spend their money.
So it's funny, right? I mean, you're absolutely right. When we look at our subscriber base, the people who pay us every month, you know, for us to produce this, it's all old topics.
Yeah, people like us.
Right.
Okay.
So
you're younger than me.
you're constantly caught between the two views.
Yes.
Okay, and where your focus will be, right? And then, of course, when it comes to number of readers, it's millions. And guess they're all young people, right? On some of our publications.
Yes.
So
Digital,
we struggle with the concept. So firstly, we subscribe to it, that we must move, and I'll come to a few things that we've done.
Yes.
But first and foremost, what I wanted to say that we moved away from a digital strategy to a mobile strategy.
That's exactly.
First and foremost, right? It's quite important. So we, for example, experimented with my Sowetan, my Dispatch, my Herald, my Sunday Times, where we have these apps. You can go on there and we can create channels. Like you can have a sport channel, but you can also have an engagement because it's high on engagement. Right?
Hyper-localized,
yeah,
right?
And very, very hyper-localized. And we find that with the younger folk, they want to talk back. Before we used to have letters to the editors, right, where you could write to that to the editor. Young people won't do that, but they're easy to comment on something. So you can use your up, your down. You can. So that's very important that we do that. But we struggle with the old style, and that is why we've gone through a process now of trying to revamp our newsrooms. Because it's difficult to get editors to think differently.
Yeah.
So, for example, the Business Day we can now categorically say that they produce for digital first. By the way, so and how do you do it? You go live with news as they come along, as much as often, and then your papers will have the more in-depth stories.
Correct.
That's to give you time.
Absolutely.
To do your work, etc. So that's true. But then also the issue, and coming back to this whole brand. Building the brand and how this shift impacts. The mediums that most of you are on generally have a high percentage of fake news.
Yes.
Okay. And so how do you discern, you know, and how do you make sure that things are verified? Okay, because you can destroy an individual brand, and now so much easier. You've seen the power of Obama when he came in, it was all, you know, kind of online. So you can build or make or break. And also when you think of building the brand South Africa, we tend to put everything out there, you know, easily, and it might not be true, and people see it internationally. So we, even as a media house, we talk about how do we utilize the digital space and our printed space with more measured thinking, and we know that we all have a responsibility towards our country. Okay? And it doesn't mean, you must not interpret that we want to hide the things, but we also want to be able to make sure that when an investor sits somewhere else, right, he must decide, am I going to invest my 100 billion in South Africa, or am I taking it to Botswana? And then he'll look at it and he'll say, okay, these guys look here, they're on strike, they on the highway, they're throwing stones all the time, and These things happen, but it's how we portray it. And sometimes we use fake news, you know, out there as well. So we must, and the more you're on social media and the more you are in a digital space, it's easier because there's no filter.
100%. But also having the backing of a brand like Arena with titles that are respected across the country, across the continent, the inherent in that is the fact-checking. So I always say to my wife, she says to me, oh, did you hear? This happened. And I said, where did you get that? As soon as she says to me, Facebook, I go, Go and look online, go and check Sunday Times, Times Live, etc. Go and have a look at those publications and see whether they're writing about it. Because that's the one thing about journalism, right? We can say that things need to change, but the one thing it can't change is fact-checking. Getting your facts straight, telling both sides, leaving it up to you who listens and reads and watches to make up your mind at the end of the day. So when we talk about fighting fake news, we should be supporting brands that know how to gatekeep the fake and give us the real. And I think that is such a big thing when it comes to traditional media these days as well.
Yeah, so if you take that now and you talk about influencers, you guys all follow the Bonangs and this one and that one, yeah, right? And the role of influencers also become quite important.
Yeah.
So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a influencer festival.
Yeah.
And what we did is we brought our editors and brands, and we brought the Facebooks and the Instagrams and TikToks and Twitters and all of those together. And we spoke about how do we ensure more credible news within that environment.
Absolutely.
And if you're an influencer, how should you behave, by the way?
Yeah.
So, you know, and because today you're doing a soap advert and tomorrow you're doing something else, how do you know, and what brands do you associate with?
Correct.
What values do you stand for? This is how things are migrating.
Yeah.
So there's awards for newspapers. We are now thinking of doing influencer awards.
It's a good idea.
Right, and to be the first where we can say the influencer that does the most positive news. It's not that, I'm just using an example, right? We'll have different categories, or the influencer that is a little bit more dynamic, or uses music properly, or spreads good messaging. So we're kind of thinking of building those kind of awards to show that we are fully moving into this. And this is why I get excited, like I visited your center, you know, the Innovation Center. If any of you have an opportunity, you must go and visit the center there. You walk in there and there are different businesses, young people on computers doing new strategies and growth and so on. And I was actually thinking that we need our people in there with this younger, new set of mindset, so that we can think constantly that we must innovate and be relevant to the new South Africa.
Absolutely. And just on the influencers, you know, people knock influencers sometimes. Now listen, there's some influencers that'll rock up at the opening of an envelope. But I had a very interesting conversation with, who knows, Nadia Jafta?
Yeah. She was one of those that I influenced.
There's some, listen, we're not going to go into all her posts and everything. But if I look at when I first interviewed her on Cape Talk, and I spoke to her last week, right, the agency that she managed to build. Put aside some of the content people might have a bit of a challenge with. You can't agree with everybody all the time. I've given up on that, right? But if you look at the art of being able to connect with an audience, that is key. The art of transitioning from utopis like us to young, exciting content producers like yourselves. I mean, Michelle van Breda, old friend of mine, she, wat is Sari? 'n vriendin vir elke vrou.
Yeah.
Right. She took over this magazine, and it was very, I was going to say verkramp. I wouldn't call it verkramp. It was just very old school, right? And I said to her, how did you turn this Sari into a magazine that like even younger people are reading now? She says, no, I kept 50% of my magazine, the old contributors. And then I brought in people like Nathaniel. Like, today we're going to do this. You know, so we bring Nathaniel in, and Nathaniel gives his take, and we get younger, more contrarian contributors and opportunity. And then she built this arena where both voices were heard.
Absolutely.
And everybody felt heard within that space.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just one-sided, right? But I want to move on to other things. I mean, we can talk, I mean, we're here to talk about the media, Lyndon. I think the message, has landed. You know, it's not about getting a Yabru as an editor. It's basically saying, hey man, just broaden your pool that you're grabbing from. And even if it means at the end of your news bulletin, a tail ender, like one or two, a funny story, a good story. There's some really good stories out there. You saw a couple of them yesterday, and that's the tip of the iceberg. And they're genuine, and they're impacting people's lives. But I want to talk about you, right? I mean, you're at Arena now, you're managing director. I mean, it's an awesome job to have. It's a great job given where we are in the transition in the media space as well. But you're also one of the first black directors at Standard Bank. So let's run through a little bit of your history, what you've done. You've also spoken to some presidents that were amazing, well, others not so. But I mean, you know, you've spoken to a whole host of them. Just run us through some of your experience, Lyndon, over the last few decades.
Funnily enough, I won a scholarship in a female magazine called Cosmopolitan. They were, and my secretary came to me and said, Lyndon, you want to do an MBA, but you can't afford it. Here's an application. And I'll cut the story short. I filled it out and, you know, and won the scholarship to go to the UK. And while I was there, one of the lecturers, her husband was the High Commissioner to South Africa. And he dealt with the Standard Bank chairman, right? And he then told him that I was doing well. You know, we study hard and we try and excel and etc. You know, and I was doing well, you know, in the classroom. Then they sent the first person to me to recruit me, and I said, no, I'm not interested to work for Standard Bank because I found you as a racist bank. Because we couldn't get bursaries from you when we were students. We had to have parents sign out 3 forms. Remember, the guarantees and the house and everything, and I didn't have that. And I felt that, you know. And then they sent the next one to me. I'll cut it short. And I don't even remember Chris Landsberg.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, he's a professor now at UJ. Eventually, they sent Chris to me to come and talk to me. And I said, Chris, you know, they thought, now, okay, send a colored to a colored, and, you know, they'll maybe agree, you know. And I softened up. Chris used his own methods. And then eventually, the chairman himself came to London to see me and speak to me. Dr. Conrad Strauss was the chairman of Standard Bank then. And then I told him the same story, and I don't know. And I said to him, listen, the bank is untransformed. He says to me, okay, Grootbeck, come and transform the bank.
Sorry.
And I said, okay. For those of you who don't understand what that means, it means big mouth, but it's Afrikaans. It's nothing else. And then he said to me, come and transform the bank. I said, okay, now we're talking. So that's how I became head of transformation at Standard Bank, joined in and transformed the chairman's fund, and did a lot of exciting things to change the image of the bank again. In the, I went, there was Tito Mboweni was in the Department of Labor. I went to, he was one of the biggest critics of the bank. Went to sit with Tito and understand what he said, no, I don't like your chief economist, Nico Chopayanka, because he always gives bad news about the country. All right, and then we have to work with Nico, and if we couldn't work, eventually we had to move Nico out. And then, the bank then decided they had only white directors. So interesting enough, they had various categories of artwork that you could get in your building. So, if you're not a director, you can't get an original piece of art. Standard Bank has a lot of art.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but you had to get a copy, so that I came in at what is called senior manager, and then they didn't know what to call me. So they created a title called Portfolio Head Group Transformation. It's never existed in the bank ever again, because they didn't want to make me director, all right? But then, of course, a part of the transformation, I then worked there to change, and that changed, and I became one of the first black directors at the bank. But I drove the transformation of the bank. So Sim Chabalala, who's now Group CEO, started with me, as in my program, And the whole Lincoln Marley, you might know, left, or he started in my program, etc. So we built the program of transformation, supplier development, and all of those aspects within the bank. And many of the people there now, we started that 20 years ago, just on the transformation and the different way of thinking. And then a couple of things that I did then is I linked with Dr. Matlana, who was Mr. Mandela's physician. And we started the Soweto Heritage Trust, that could now look at transforming Soweto. And Mr. Mandela then gave us his house to open. In actual fact, it was my daughter's matric ball, and then I had a call from Zelda Lagrange saying to me, listen, Mr. Mandela wants to see you. And then, and the only reason he knew about me is because I built a school for him in Matatiao. Yes. And a lot of companies built schools for him, so I wasn't unique. But the difference was that I was a maths and science teacher before, by the way. You didn't know that. And so when I built the school, in actual fact, I saw Jocelyn here, Jocelyn's brother, Cliff Peterson. I called Cliff and I said, Cliff, I need you to help me. I want to really make the school different for Mr. Mandela. And we built in a computer science lab and kitted it out. This is in the rural area. And we built a science lab and kitted it out. So when I took Mr. Mandela there, he was blown away and in tears, because people have given him empty schools. I gave him a school with desks, everything in, and I've been able to mobilize different people to do that.
Teaching them how to fish.
Yes, absolutely. So, so he remembered this, and when he wanted to open his house, some of you are too young to know the story, but Winnie Mandela stayed in the house while Mr. Mandela was in prison. And then when Mr. Mandela came back, he wasn't happy with the way Winnie was dealing with the house, because they were, doing like a little shebeen there. And Mr. Mandela then told Winnie to move out and gave her the bigger house around the corner in Orlando West, and then had the key to the house. That's when I got the call. And him and Dr. Matlana then said to me, here's the key. We want this house open on Monday to the public. So I called up another guy that some of you might know, Zukile, Walter Makalipi, who was with me at Good Hope. And I called Walter, he was from Soweto, and we took a mop and a broom, and we went to go and clean up the house, and we opened it to the public on the Monday, Wow. And I mean, it's a story. It's now, I renovated it the first time around, and the second time it was renovated as well. So when you go to Mandela's house, there 8116 in Vilakazi Street, that's the house. He gave me some beautiful photos of him with his dog, in the house. So I've got really good memories and little things. And then he gave me one of his books, that he had the poetry in. So I just developed a really good relationship with him.
What a man.
Yeah.
I managed to cover him as a sound man, journalist. I was still very young at the time, trying to figure out what to do with my life. So struck by his humility.
Yeah.
Such a humble man. But so, your interaction with the beloved Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, of course, now. Thabo Mbeki is known for a couple of things.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one is obviously how he's botched HIV/AIDS, a lot of people would say. And as the media, we gave him a really hard time. But the one thing people don't talk about is the fact that our country has never seen growth like we had under Thabo Mbeki. I mean, we were growing post 6%, 7%. Never seen that again, right? Tell us a bit about your interaction with him.
Well, of course, Thabo was an intellectual, right?
Yeah.
We know that he wrote his own speeches, and when we wrote it to him, he tore it apart. He was very engaging on a, you know, from an economic perspective. During Mandela and his reign, you know, the first thing they decided, we're not taking huge loans from the IMF, etc., because that is what he believed that would lead to structural adjustment. Yep. What is structural adjustment for you economic students is that somebody gives you a loan and then you've got to change your behavior to meet those requirements. And therefore you adjust things, right, in your life or in your business or etc., because you've got the loan and they say, well, I want this, 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 and you adjust to meet the requirements and the covenants of the loan, and you forget about what you're supposed to deliver. So he was very strong on those things. And the one that I resonated with him and where we met up is that, you know, the whole concept of African Renaissance. I think we must take some questions after this, right? The concept of the African Renaissance. You know, he was very strong. If you know, NEPAD started under him. And I wrote an essay once that the European Renaissance was in actual fact an African Renaissance. Yeah. And why did I say that? Because they came to Africa to study the pyramids, by the way, on maths and many things. And they took those ideas from Africa, and then they had a European or a Western. And so the two of us met on that. He read my paper, and so one of the first things when I came back to South Africa is I went on a mission with him to DC. There to the US Senate, and we spoke about what the African Renaissance means, right? And what do we need to do to make sure that Africa is rejuvenated, etc. Wonderful experience with him, deep thinker, you know, everything he says. When we now got Arena together, by the way, the first trip we did now was to two people. We went to Dr. Motlana to tell him what we are doing, another deep thinker, and we went to Thabo Mbeki. Yeah. And Thabo, when we went to Dr. Motlana, his first question to us, why did you not buy Gallo Records? We asked him why, that a former president will ask you this. He says, it has the richest history of South African music ever. And we went out and we got it onto the fold immediately. You know, that was Dr. Motlana inspired. And then when we came to Thabo Mbeki, his biggest thing is, how are you relevant, what you're doing in the rest of Africa? You are not an island, you are an African. So, you know, that's the kind of way he challenges us, and it gives you facts. He sits and he tells you of how the rest of Africa helped our democracy.
Now you see, like many of us go to the shop and we go and get a Sprite, whatever. Lyndon goes to buy record companies. When I grow up one day, I tell you. Okay, finally, and we have to talk about this president, please. I mean, the only thing I could say, right? I have I'll put it right on the table. I have no positive things to say about Zuma other than the fact that, you know, he made Aaron Motsoaledi health minister at the time, and that to me was the best thing he could have done. I've got a lot of time for Aaron Motsoaledi. Despite what he's doing, with, a lot of people might argue with Home Affairs and whatever, he was a good health minister, I think. You've dealt with the former president. Tell us a little bit about your interactions there.
He's a very passionate and charming person, you know, really good. I went to see him, and I sat for about maybe 3.5 hours outside waiting to see him. Yeah, because he had people coming in, left, right. And I found out that was when he reshuffled the cabinet afterwards. So he was busy consulting. But having been in the presidency under Mandela in the building, you know, I went to the inauguration of Mandela, and having been in the presidency with Thabo, and then being in the presidency with Zuma, the place was busier. He was consulting and people coming in and out. And the reason I went to go and see him is I started a football tournament in 2012. Those of you might remember, I brought Manchester United to play on Mr. Mandela's birthday.
Yes.
I started the football invitational in support of Mandela Day. Because Mandela Day, people are forgetting what to do, and I wanted globally people to be aware. But I wanted to call that the Presidential Cup.
Yes.
So I went to Zuma to endorse it, you know, and then we recognize every year a different president, you know, although it will be on Mr. Mandela's birthday, you know.
Right.
And so that is a concept that I went to him with, and I wanted his office to support. And he was very good. He listened attentively, asked the right questions, and then eventually said, okay, I give you a blessing. I decided not to, subsequent for other reasons of other people saying, I can't involve him, because at that stage now it was problematic. And then the second time I got involved with him is when I started, I didn't tell you this, but I kind of orchestrated the biggest book on Mr. Mandela called the Mandela Opus. I haven't published it, but I employed Ryland Fisher to be the editor, who's a top writer and editor, and I employed Benny Gould, who Benny Gould is a top photographer. He did Desmond Tutu and he did Mandela. And then I started the Mandela Opus, okay? And I then decided to interview. I couldn't get hold of Cyril, because I did Rolf Meyer, but I couldn't get Cyril for the Constitution. But anyway, I then got Zuma. And I told my guys to come in with a camera. So you must see the footage. Wow. Zuma spoke passionately about his time in MK and his time with Mandela and the lessons from Mr. Mandela and all the things that he wants to do to emulate Mr. Mandela. Of course, he didn't listen to himself very much, but it was good.
Didn't think so.
But it was a very, very, very good, and I can understand why people will vote for him, because he's quite a decisive guy. You know, might make the wrong decision, but he's decisive and he's very engaging. You know,
so he's not dissimilar to Malema, by the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can go either way. You know what I've noticed with great leaders that you meet, even Bill Clinton, and others, when you meet people and they're about to shake your hand, the guy shakes your hand, but he's already looking to the next person, right? Who, like premiers and others, maybe some lessons for our premier candidate. They shake your hand, but they're not making eye contact. With Bill Clinton, Mr. Mandela, and Zuma.
Yeah.
When they look at you, it's like no one else exists. They're just talking to you.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very strong characteristic.
And
but I hope he doesn't
be
become president again.
Oh, him. Him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful.
Okay.
Let's move on. Let's first put our hands together for Lyndon Barnes. This man, a wealth of experience, plays a pivotal role in molding the narrative and balancing it out, as we've heard as well, but in the history of this country as well. I mean, listen, I certainly respect all the work you've done, and I look up to someone like you, man. Growing up, looking at what you've achieved, oak like me from Elsie's would go, hey, I want to be like Lyndon one day. I'm going to do some Q&A now. Who's got questions? Just put up your hands. Don't be shy. There's never stupid questions. There's only questions. So if you have, yes, sir.
Yeah. So in South Africa, and obviously working with different businesses, you've seen corruption and what that has done to many businesses. How have you handled coming into contact with corrupt officials and people? How have you treated them? I think. Kieno, firstly, when the questions come, you also have a wealth of experience. Feel free to, not only from me, also respond, because his own experience, I think, will also be helpful. I mean, it's difficult. So firstly, now, being involved in media, you don't want to answer your phone on a Sunday, right? Because on a Sunday, if somebody read their story, and then they send you a text, you know. I mean, I get it all the time, you know, as far as that, from officials and people wanting to know why the story was written like this. I can actually show you examples of 2 weeks ago, you know. So you have that. But in the day-to-day dealing, you find it a lot happening. I mean, even with our journalists at times, You know, we have to question some of the stories and the angles. So we try and be very strict with them in terms of that. If there's anything, we immediately try and deal with it. But personally, in a business-to-business relationship, people put it to you very subtly. Okay, so let me give you your own example, or our example. You drive, like I did the other day, driving from Cape Town, from Joburg. We decided to stop around and in Graafrenet and Prince Albert, and then I drove, and the cop stopped me. And he says to me, "Sir, you were going at 135, you know, in 120. Now this is 700 rands, you know. So what is your response?" Okay? Right. I'm going to bring it home to you, right? And so in Joburg, normally you'll say, they say, "Give me money for a cool drink." Have you experienced that? Right? Give me money for a cool drink. And then you think it's okay to give that guy $50 so that he can let you leave.
Yeah.
This is where corruption starts, right? With us. So I say to the guy, "Hey, brah, did you hear about forgiveness? You can forgive me." I said, "But for added benefit, I will also pray for you." No, but and he let me go. My wife just looked. I said, you know, and let me go. But I'm saying that it starts like that, right? So you get a deal, and somebody says to you, "Lyndon, I'll give you this contract of 5 million, you know, but I want $1 million." How do you deal with those kind of things? Those are the situations that we face with in the reality in the world. And you've got to be very strong, because once you put, you know, you start with the wrong thing, you get a reputation. And that is why, guys, like the premier that I love very much, I really like this premier. And it was very, very effective, was Zweli Mkhize in KZN. The guy, I mean, I worked with him, you know, when I did the Mandela thing there, I did it in Durban, okay? Never did the guy ask me, but he was known as Mr. 10% to others. You know, every deal that he signs, you've got to give him, or his handlers 10%. But the guy is he's a visionary. He never did it with me, you know, or his handlers never did it with me. But we face this all the time. And the first one you have to say no to becomes easier. If you don't do that, you're in trouble.
So, you know, I was asked to join a panel. People always ask me to like speak on panels and whatever. And I'll mention Bain and Co were there. And I said no, I won't be part of the panel. And they asked why. I said, because that company is sitting there. This was in the midst of it. But also, I mean, we have KPMG in our building. And I made it very clear, right? So I say it to my managing director, I say it to everybody. I said, we must not forget, because we talk about politicians, we must not forget that consultants brought us to our knees as well. Corporate South Africa brought us to our knees as well, right? And I even said it to them. I mean, there's some good people there. I mean, I helped them with a storytelling thing for one of their businesses, busy creating jobs. I didn't ask for any money under the table. But you have to know where your principles are. And you want to be able to put your head down at night. And that is very, very important. Because you take bribe number one, they own you. Just selfishly. Forget the principles, right? Principles are important. But once someone pays, let's say I pay Lyndon, come, let's do a deal, man. I'll give you 2 million out of this. I record my transaction with Lyndon. Now I can go back to Lyndon every year. Hey, Lyndon, how are you doing? You know, I'm looking for another 4 million deal.
Absolutely.
And Lyndon says no. I say, oh, remember last year, remember this, I recorded this. You don't want to get, it's one of the reasons I stopped taking sponsorship. Yeah. Because once you take sponsorship, as a brand or whatever, people want their piece of meat and then some.
So that's the easy answer that we give you. The question is, how do you deal with it, right? How do you compensate if you're not paying a bribe? So I have two things I do. I have a book of favors, okay? You do me good, I remember you. There will come a time where you need something or whatever, I can do good. And so you build a network. I call it a book of favors, right? And so you build a network of people that's been good to you. So when you fall on hard times, those people will be good to you too. Are you with me? So that's something. And then sometimes you hear things about the person, and you know that he might need help, and with his child with a bursary or something. You know, you give back. Exactly. The other thing I do is, because how do I expect this guy to put his advertising in our paper, for, you know, millions, and not in another paper, right? So I spend an inordinate amount of time on doing dinners. So I take people out, I have a dinner, and I thank them. You know, nearly every night I've got a dinner, you know, with clients. So it's client entertainment. You take people out. So that's a way you kind of compensate, you know, because you can't just say, well, we're not going to take any bribes, we're not going to, you know, it's tough. You still need this guy to want to do business with you, you know. So, you know, you're nice to him. I mean, I took him out for a few dinners now.
Don't worry. Listen, I tell
Okay.
you, that bribe I paid you was way too low. you took me to, what's that place? No, I'm kidding. No, but seriously speaking, guys, I think at the end of the day, Lyndon, your wealth of experience, you know, you've been on the journey since democracy. You've shared a big part of your life. Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. You know, I think Arena is in obviously amazing hands with you as a managing director. I think the balance is key. I think we still cover what one needs to cover, but I think balance is everything as for our psyche as a nation. It's important. We want our kids to grow up and know that you are the future and that there are opportunities and possibilities, and you can be like
There's a question like
Elon Musk. Okay, we're going to do more questions. Okay,
so while the question's coming, it's interesting you're talking about balance. You know, my first title on my card when I joined the Lebashe group that bought us, I'll show you my card. They didn't have a title, you know, because we were now getting involved in negotiating on Arena. So my title was Finding Balance.
What?
You won't be, I gave myself that title. My job is to, you know, but anyway, let's listen to the question. Yeah.
And I know while the world doesn't want to know about God, you know, they leave God out of everything. But I would like to ask Lyndon, you know, what advice can you give the students? We're going to be sending them out into the big wide world. They're going to be working for corporates and even for government and all of that. So when they face challenges that as maybe as a Adventist Christian, Sabbath keeping and things like that, how do they get around that? What would be your advice, you know, to keep that in mind when they start their careers or even one in their careers?
So generally what I mean, I can just talk about my personal experience, you know. You must have your own code, whatever you want to call it. You can call it Christian code, moral code, ethical code. You need a code, you know, to back you up so that you have a set of values, right? So what's important for us when we formed Arena, you know, I said A of Arena for accountability, R for respect, E for excellence, N for nobility of character. That was our N, and the last A was for agility and being adaptable. So that we made the values for Arena. Now similarly for your personal thing, you need to have your own set of values that you do. So when you get into the workplace, you know what to do. For example, nobody will bother me. My phone automatically goes on, please do not disturb, from a Friday evening to a Saturday evening. You know, so when you call me and you're not in the family group, you know, it will just send you a message. I'm unavailable or nothing will happen. You must decide. So as a Christian institution, I think the best thing you can do is teach your children values. So that you take that set of values, and nobody walks in with a religion or something like that. You don't want, because people will ostracize you and say this, that, but you walk in with your values. It's interesting, I was showing somebody the other day, I've got a Monday night dinner group, okay, at my house. So most Mondays I cook at my house. And I have, those of you know Robert Marawa, he's a founding member for 12 years. Brayton Paulser from rugby. It used to be Kolani Gwala from 702. Passed away. Udo pops in now and then, etc. Guys in the media and sport, and Makai and Tini, whatever. So they come to my house on a Monday. They all know I'm going to pray. Okay, so I can actually show you. So my birthday cake this year, so every year We make a birthday cake. And my birthday cake this year, they had the word bishop on there. So they all call me. They don't even call me Lyndon anymore. They call me the bishop. Yeah. So Brayton will come and he says, hey, come here, man, bishop. Come here, man. And then the people say, hey, is this guy a real bishop? So you get what I'm saying? So everybody, so they know when they come to my house, we're going to pray for the meal, whatever that might be. So each one takes in their code, and hopefully the time that they are here, that you will instill in them a moral code that they would be able to take to the workplace.
Any other questions?
Is it? One more?
How old's your little one?
Is he asking the question? No, just. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have to go. Yeah. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, make as much noise as you like. Mr. Lyndon Boyd.
No.
Thank you very much for this time. Always a pleasure being here, and hopefully you've taken some nuggets that'll help you make some really, really solid decisions in the future. So, here's to your future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieno. It's a while.